Between 1980 and 1989, the American bathroom became a laboratory. The shelves held aerosols that were quietly destroying the ozone layer, antiseptics made from mercury, and shampoos containing 1/3 real beer. Nobody asked questions. Here are 30 bathroom products from the 1980s that made absolutely no sense. The Jerry Curl Activator was not optional, it was a daily obligation. After Michael Jackson wore the look on the Thriller cover in 1982, the style spread nationwide. Every wearer needed to saturate their hair in curl moisturizer every morning and sleep beneath a plastic processing cap each night to keep the curl pattern alive. A typical activator bottle ran $3 to $6 and was gone within days. The real design flaw was that the product was intensely greasy, and it transferred to every fabric it touched, including pillowcases, shirt collars, car headrests, and upholstered furniture. Comer Cottrell invented a home kit version called the Curly Kit to make the look affordable, but the chemical process progressively damaged the hair shaft with every application. Coming to America parodied the activator in 1988 as a fictional brand called Soul Glow, and the joke landed because every American audience recognized exactly what was soaking through their furniture. Once the process started, there was no easy way to stop it. In 1986, the Epilady arrived from Israel in a promising pink box. It was a rotating spring appliance that opened and closed at high speed, gripping individual hairs and pulling them out at the root. Teen magazines called it the painless future of leg hair removal. The word painless was not supported by the experience of anyone who used it. The coil had no cushioning, no tension control, and no mechanism to distinguish a leg hair from the skin covering an ankle bone or kneecap. Women described the sensation in terms that magazines would not print. It left red follicle marks wherever it passed. Epilady sold in enormous numbers because the packaging photographs showed serene women in sundresses, and there was genuinely no competing product at the time. The company never claimed the device would be comfortable in the small print. They simply did not include that information anywhere on the box. Sun-In came in a cheerful orange bottle with a promise of salon highlights you could apply at home. The active ingredient was hydrogen peroxide, the same bleaching compound used in industrial textile whitening, mixed with lemon juice concentrate that made it smell harmless. You sprayed it onto damp hair, added heat, and the peroxide oxidized melanin in each hair shaft until the pigment broke down. For light hair, this produced recognizable highlights. For dark hair, it produced an orange stripe that could not be removed. The concentration was high enough that any mist landing on skin bleached those patches for days. No warning described any of this. Sun-In sat next to regular shampoo on drugstore shelves as if it belonged in the same category, and it moved through the entire decade without a single regulatory review of its active chemical concentration. Aquanet Extra Hold Hairspray was the structural material of the decade. Without it, the teased shellacked hair of the 1980s was not possible. Not the 6-inch mall bangs, not the feathered wings, not the rock concert volume that could deplete an entire can each morning. The problem was the propellant. Aquanet used chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, to push product out of the can. Chlorofluorocarbons are harmless at ground level. In the stratosphere, ultraviolet light breaks them apart, releasing chlorine radicals that destroy ozone molecules. The EPA, the FDA, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission banned chlorofluorocarbons in most aerosols back in 1978, but reformulation was gradual. Through the early part of the decade, millions of Aquanet cans were still discharging chlorofluorocarbons into bathroom air every morning. The Montreal Protocol followed in 1987. The manufacturers had known about the ozone chemistry for years before the British scientists confirmed the hole in 1985. Before the ozone hole made front pages, something else was building in bathroom cabinets, a soap that did less than nothing while selling itself as the future of hygiene. Triclosan antibacterial soap arrived in the 1980s with one promise: it killed more germs than regular soap. By 2001, 76% of all liquid hand soaps on American shelves contained it. What manufacturers did not advertise was that the FDA had raised safety concerns about triclosan as early as 1978 and never received adequate data confirming it was safe for long-term daily skin exposure. Triclosan is an endocrine disruptor linked to disrupted thyroid function, early puberty, and impaired immune development in children. It was also no more effective than plain soap. The FDA finally banned triclosan from consumer soaps in September 2016. The CDC had found detectable triclosan in over 75% of Americans tested. The concern had been sitting in an FDA file since 1978. The home perm kit turned a bathroom into a chemistry station for an afternoon. The box contained plastic rods, end papers, waving lotion, and a neutralizer, with instructions requiring precise timing to avoid leaving the user with either limp hair or something resembling a Brillo pad. The active ingredient was ammonium thioglycolate, a sulfurous compound with a sharp chemical smell that embedded itself in walls and towels for days. It works by breaking the disulfide bonds in hair protein so the hair can be reshaped around the rods before the neutralizer rebonds the structure. When the lotion pooled against the scalp rather than distributing evenly, it held a strongly alkaline compound against skin for 12 to 20 minutes, the mechanism of a chemical burn. No prescription was required. The box showed a woman with glossy curls and a toll-free number for questions. A chemical safety disclosure was not part of the packaging. Nair promised smooth legs in minutes, with no blade and no effort. The active ingredients, calcium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide, cause the hair shaft to swell until the chemicals penetrate and dissolve the keratin protein holding it together. The hair simply wipes away. These are the same alkaline compounds used in drain openers and in concrete manufacturing, and when held against skin beyond the specified window, the surface begins to break down by the same mechanism. The instructions acknowledged that burning or redness might occur. That is clinical language for a chemical burn with delayed onset, where the full reaction does not appear until hours after removal. Women who applied it to the bikini line or underarm reported reactions taking days to resolve. No recall was ever issued. The burns were FDA approved along with the product. The small glass bottle of mercurochrome sat in nearly every American medicine cabinet through the 70s and into the 80s. The orange-red liquid parents dabbed onto scraped knees while the child braced for the sting. It stained skin for a week and burned sharply on contact, which parents read as evidence it was working. The active ingredient, merbromin, is an organomercury compound that releases mercury ions directly into the wound. Mercury is a neurological toxin. Applied to intact skin, absorption was minimal. Applied repeatedly to open wounds, exactly as an antiseptic is intended to be used, the mercury crossed into tissue and entered circulation. The FDA reviewed organomercury compounds through the 90s and in 1998 classified merbromin as not generally recognized as safe. Mercurochrome was pulled from U.S. shelves after 60 years as a pediatric staple. In many countries today, the orange bottle is still available in pharmacies. Johnson's baby powder was so trusted that the name itself became shorthand for gentleness. Through the 1980s, adults used it daily, after showers, in shoes, in skin folds, directly on genital tissue, treating it as the most benign product in the house. Johnson & Johnson's own internal documents, revealed through litigation, show the company knew as early as the 1950s that their talc contained asbestos fibers. A 1992 internal memo acknowledged the cancer publicity and recommended increasing marketing toward Black and Hispanic women. The company continued selling talc-based baby powder in the United States until 2020. By 2024, Johnson & Johnson faced over 61,000 asbestos-related lawsuits. A jury ordered the company to pay over $2 billion to women with ovarian cancer. The powder in your family's bathroom cabinet in 1985 had asbestos in it. Johnson & Johnson knew. Clearasil hit peak saturation in the 1980s, and teenagers trusted it without reservation. The active ingredient in most formulations was benzoyl peroxide at 5 to 10%, a powerful oxidizing agent that kills acne bacteria by generating reactive oxygen inside the pore. It worked. What the packaging did not explain was that benzoyl peroxide at 10% operates on the same bleaching mechanism as industrial laundry whitener. Pressed nightly against a pillowcase, it bleached the fabric white in the shape of a face, a phenomenon that confused parents and destroyed linens across the country before anyone thought to read the ingredient list. UK advertising featured the radio DJ Andy Kershaw interviewing satisfied teenagers, including one girl whose boyfriend used to call her Spotty. The pillowcases were not available for comment. If Clearasil was the daytime treatment, Seabreeze was what teenagers reached for at night. It was the clear liquid in the blue bottle that promised to close pores and remove oil. What it delivered was closer to a chemical exfoliation event. Seabreeze was primarily isopropyl alcohol at an estimated 60 to 70%, higher than the rubbing alcohol under the same sink. Applied to adolescent skin already stressed by acne and hormonal shifts, it stripped the natural oil barrier completely. The skin's response to barrier stripping was to produce more oil to compensate, which triggered more breakouts, and that encouraged more Seabreeze. The product created the conditions it claimed to treat. No dermatologist would recommend this regimen today. No warning described the feedback loop. It burned, and that burn was marketed as the sensation of thorough cleansing, as proof the chemistry was working. The burn was the damage. Home tanning beds arrived in American spare bedrooms in the early 1980s, marketed as the controlled alternative to outdoor sun. The machines used fluorescent tubes emitting predominantly UVA radiation, which the industry promoted as the tanning wavelength that did not cause sunburn. This had a significant flaw. UVA penetrates deeper into the dermis than UVB, producing the DNA damage associated with melanoma. A study of tanning bed injuries treated in hospital emergency rooms found that 80% were burns from equipment sold as burn-safe. European researchers found 4 out of 5 commercial tanning beds exceeded established international UV safety limits. A study of women diagnosed with melanoma before age 30 found that 97% of 63 subjects had used tanning beds. The FDA required warning labels on tanning equipment in the mid-1980s. The warnings appeared. No federal ban on home tanning equipment was ever issued. Listerine did not start as a mouthwash. The formula was developed in 1879 as a surgical antiseptic, then sold as a floor cleaner, a treatment for gonorrhea, and a cure for dandruff, before the Lambert Pharmacal Company settled on oral hygiene. Their 1921 campaign warned Americans about a condition called halitosis, a word the company effectively manufactured from a Latin root to make bad breath sound like a diagnosable illness. Sales tripled. Through the 1980s, Listerine advertising still implied the product prevented colds and sore throats. The original formula was 26.9% alcohol, stronger than many wines, applied twice daily to the mucosal lining of the mouth. The American Dental Association gave Listerine its first clinical endorsement for plaque reduction in 1988. That was the first verified health claim in over a century of aggressive marketing. Everything before 1988 was a story the company told to sell floor cleaner to your mouth. The dry look was Gillette's answer for men who wanted hold without looking like they were wearing women's hairspray. The aerosol arrived in a matte, masculine can and promised a natural finish, which it achieved using a petroleum-derived polymer in an alcohol and flammable propellant base, the same fundamental chemistry as every other aerosol hairspray in different packaging. The propellant was flammable. American bathrooms were small, poorly ventilated rooms where an aerosol cloud could hang in the air for minutes after spraying. Men using the dry look near an open bathroom heater or a lit cigarette were operating in a room with a briefly elevated concentration of flammable gas. The warning against open flames appeared on the can in small print. The television advertisement showed a confident man striding through wind with excellent hair. The ventilation situation in the average American bathroom was not part of the campaign. If the premise of the dry look was that men needed better marketing on their grooming products, Body on Tap offered a different theory entirely. What if the shampoo just contained beer? Clairol launched Body on Tap in 1978 with the explicit claim that the formula was 1/3 real beer, specifically Schlitz. The bottle was shaped like a brown glass beer bottle to make the comparison unavoidable. The marketing logic was that beer gave hair body and shine, which sounds plausible until you verify it. The beer proteins and yeasts were inert after processing and contributed nothing clinically active to hair shaft health. But the branding worked strongly in a decade hungry for anything that sounded natural. Body on Tap sold steadily through the early 80s before quietly disappearing. The label never explained what occupied the remaining 2/3. Through most of the 1980s, the outlet you plugged your hairdryer into had no mechanism to stop electrical current if the appliance fell into water. Ground fault circuit interrupters were required in new bathroom construction by the National Electrical Code beginning in 1975, but that requirement applied only to new builds and renovations. Homes already standing were not required to retrofit, and most did not. A hairdryer dropped into a filled bathtub in an older home completed a circuit through the water and through the person in it, with nothing interrupting the flow. The Consumer Product Safety Commission documented hundreds of electrocution deaths annually in American bathrooms from immersed or near-water electrical appliances during this period. Immersion detection cutoffs in hairdryers were not mandated by the CPSC until 1991. For the entire decade of the 1980s, tens of millions of American bathrooms combined an unprotected outlet with a tub full of water and nothing between them. Stiff Stuff was a cult product among teenagers who needed their hair to survive a school dance without moving. The formula delivered a vinyl acetate polymer film that coated each hair strand and locked the structure in place with approximately the flexibility of dried lacquer. Too much, which teenagers reliably applied, did not hold hair in a style, but fused it into a single unmovable mass. Washing it out required multiple cycles because the polymer film resisted water. Hair treated repeatedly with heavy vinyl acetate sprays became progressively drier and more brittle as the plasticizer displaced the natural oil coating of the shaft. The product was marketed with cheerful packaging and the instruction to use sparingly. The instruction did not explain what the polymer was, what it did to the hair with repeated application, or why the bristles of combs snapped on contact with a thoroughly treated hairstyle. Flex shampoo was Revlon's best-selling hair care line through the 70s and into the 80s, the reliable, affordable option in nearly every American shower. Then, users started noticing their hair felt worse after washing than before. The accusation was that Flex stripped hair, removed natural oils more aggressively than competing formulas, leaving hair dry, prone to tangling, and brittle over time. Revlon never acknowledged the criticism directly. The formula contained sodium lauryl sulfate at concentrations dermatologists now recognize as harsh for daily use, combined with a conditioning agent that provided short-term softness without restoring the oil barrier it removed. By the mid-80s, Pantene Pro-V was marketing explicitly on the claim of nutrients. positioning itself against exactly what Flex represented. Revlon eventually reformulated. The original Flex still has a dedicated nostalgic following who maintain the stripped hair accusation was wrong. Nobody has settled the argument. Avon Skin So Soft was formulated as a bath oil, a moisturizer added to bath water or applied after showering. Somewhere in the mid-1980s, a rumor spread that it repelled mosquitoes. This rumor was not initiated by Avon. It was not based on any clinical trial. It spread through neighborhood word of mouth and eventually into military units. By the late 1980s, units of the United States Marine Corps were reportedly using Skin So Soft as a field insect repellent from the Post Exchange because it appeared to work. Avon watched their bath oil sell far beyond projected numbers and said nothing to discourage the practice. The company never tested the product as a repellent, never sought approval from the Environmental Protection Agency for insect repellent claims, and never placed anything on the label about mosquitoes. They kept selling bath oil to people who had decided it was something entirely different. While Skin So Soft was solving problems it was not designed for, another product was entering bathrooms for something far more consequential. The EPT Early Pregnancy Test arrived in American drugstores in 1977, and by the 1980s, it was the standard home pregnancy test. The original design required filling a test tube with urine, adding a chemical reagent from a separate vial, placing the tube in a stabilizing ring, and waiting exactly 45 minutes without disturbing it. A brown ring at the bottom indicated a positive result. If the tube was jostled, if the reagent volume was wrong, if the test was read at 43 or 47 minutes, the result could be unreliable. Warner Chilcott recommended confirming any result with a physician, which was the right advice, given that early home tests had significantly higher error rates than laboratory analysis. Women in the 1980s were performing sensitive clinical chemistry over their bathroom sinks and making significant life decisions from the results. Chemical hair relaxers have been standard products in American stores for decades, and through the 1980s were applied regularly, often monthly, to break down natural hair texture using alkaline chemicals. The formaldehyde component in many of these formulas releases gas when the straightening chemical is heated during flat ironing. Formaldehyde is a known human carcinogen. The FDA began its formal review for formaldehyde in hair straightening products in 2016. In October 2023, the FDA proposed a ban scheduled for April 2024. The FDA missed its own deadline. No chemical hair relaxer has ever been recalled. The Black Women's Health Study, following more than 44,000 women, found long-term relaxer users at significantly elevated uterine cancer risk. Frequent use was associated with a 156% increased risk compared to non-users. The products remain on shelves. The bottles do not list formaldehyde by name. Noxzema arrived in the 1920s as a sunburn remedy, and by the 1980s was a bathroom staple. The cold white cream teenagers spread across their faces each night as a medicated cleanser. The active ingredients included camphor, menthol, eucalyptus, and phenol. Phenol is carbolic acid. It is the compound Joseph Lister used to sterilize surgical instruments in the 19th century, and it is an industrial chemical classified as toxic when absorbed through skin in sufficient quantity. At the concentrations in Noxzema, phenol delivers a numbing sensation and a brief anti-inflammatory effect, the sensation of the product working. Applied twice daily to adolescent skin, with its barrier already compromised by other products, it added a mild neurotoxin to a face under chemical stress. The FDA classified Noxzema as a cosmetic, not a drug, which meant the phenol content required no clinical safety review. The cream smelled medicinal and left skin feeling tight. Both sensations were the phenol. In 1997, the FDA granted Colgate Total Toothpaste an unusual exemption, While triclosan was being removed from hand soaps over safety concerns, Colgate submitted clinical data showing the compound reduced gingivitis, and the FDA accepted that evidence as sufficient justification to approve a triclosan-containing toothpaste, while simultaneously investigating the compound's endocrine-disrupting effects everywhere else. Colgate Total became the best-selling toothpaste in the country, and it remained on shelves for over 2 decades. A study published in Environmental Health Perspectives found that Colgate Total users had 5 times the triclosan concentration in their urine compared to users of triclosan-free toothpaste. The compound was being absorbed through the mucosal tissue of the mouth, one of the most permeable surfaces in the body, while the FDA was in the process of banning it from everything else. Colgate reformulated in 2019. The product had been in American mouths for 22 years on the strength of that one 1997 exemption. P-phenylenediamine, PPD, is the primary dye molecule in virtually every permanent hair color sold in the United States, and it has been linked to DNA damage in hair follicle cells since studies in the 1970s. PPD penetrates the hair shaft and oxidizes into a larger molecule trapped permanently inside, which is what makes the color last. The same oxidation reaction occurs at the scalp during application, where PPD contacts hair follicle cells and skin tissue for 20 to 45 minutes. The FDA reviewed PPD safety in the 1970s and took no action. Hairdressers who applied permanent color daily for years showed elevated rates of bladder cancer in occupational studies. Repeated skin absorption was documented in the literature. In the 1980s, Americans were applying PPD to their scalps at home every 4 to 6 weeks from a box sold next to the shampoo without a clinical warning of any kind. No recall has ever been issued. The product is still sold today. If what was in the bottles was alarming, what was under your feet was its own problem. Shag carpet in the bathroom peaked as a design trend in the 1970s and lingered deep into the 80s. Thick pile installed wall to wall in the one room of the house where water hit the floor every day. Bathroom carpet absorbed shower steam, sink splatter, and the fine aerosol of bacteria that settles on every surface within several feet of a flush toilet. Studies of carpet in high humidity environments found fungal spore concentrations orders of magnitude higher than on hard flooring, with mold growth beginning inside the carpet pad within days of repeated moisture exposure. The off-gassing from synthetic carpet fibers, volatile organic compounds from the adhesive and the pile, was understood as a respiratory irritant in enclosed spaces. Nobody connected any of this to the bathroom installation trend. The carpet came in harvest gold and avocado green and matched the toilet lid cover and the tank cozy. It held everything the bathroom produced for years. The American bathroom in the 1980s was a room where plugged-in electrical appliances routinely lived within arm's reach of a full bathtub, and this was considered normal. Curling irons balanced on tub ledges. Clock radios sat inches from running water. Hair dryers were used while leaning over a full sink. The Consumer Product Safety Commission ran safety campaigns through the mid-80s, warning against the combination of electricity and bathroom water. Appliance manufacturers placed warnings on cords and housings. None of it was mandatory. The warning label telling you not to use a hair dryer near a bathtub was voluntary. Mandatory immersion detection cutoffs were not required until 1991. Annual electrocution deaths in American bathrooms were documented and published by the CPSC, and they could not legally be prevented for the entire decade. Benzoyl peroxide was available to teenagers in 10% concentration without a prescription, without an age restriction, and without a warning that the compound was a potent free radical generator that penetrated the skin barrier and created reactive oxygen at the cellular level. Industrial laundry bleaching operations use benzoyl peroxide. The dermatological rationale for its use on acne was sound. Oxidative stress kills acne bacteria, but the concentration sold over the counter in the 1980s was what a physician today would prescribe cautiously and monitor closely. Parents bought it for their kids because the box said it treated acne. No dermatologist was involved. No patch test was suggested on the packaging. Teenagers applied it nightly for years, some simultaneously using Seabreeze and Noxzema, a 3-product chemical sequence that no clinician had designed and no regulator had reviewed. Today, 2.5% benzoyl peroxide is the concentration most dermatologists recommend. The 10% version remains available without a prescription. By the mid-1980s, the luxury skincare market had arrived at a solution to aging: sheep placentas. Estee Lauder and other prestige brands marketed facial creams containing animal placental extract on the premise that the growth factors in placental tissue would stimulate cellular renewal in human skin. The logic had surface plausibility. Placentas contain proteins and hormones that support rapid tissue development. What the marketing omitted was that these compounds, processed into a topical cream, cannot cross the intact skin barrier. The proteins are too large. The molecular weight of placental growth factors prevents penetration past the outermost dead cell layer of the epidermis. No clinical trial demonstrated that placental extract creams produced any measurable result beyond what a standard moisturizer achieved. The creams were sold at prices that reflected the exotic sourcing rather than any clinical evidence. The sheep were not consulted. Feminine deodorant sprays were a product category that should not have existed, and the FDA received thousands of adverse event reports confirming it. Brands including Massengill and Pristine marketed aerosol sprays containing talc, synthetic fragrance, and chemical propellants for application to vulvar tissue, the most mucosal and sensitive external tissue on the female body. The marketing premise was that natural odor was a hygiene problem requiring a consumer product solution. Gynecologists disagreed publicly and consistently from the beginning. The adverse reports documented contact dermatitis, chemical burns, vaginal irritation, and urinary tract inflammation from women who used the product as directed. The talc carried the same asbestos contamination concerns as talcum powder applied anywhere else. No warning described the adverse event data the FDA had collected. The products were discontinued by major manufacturers in the 1990s. This was not due to a regulatory ban, but due to declining sales as the gynecological consensus became impossible to ignore. If you grew up in the 1980s, your bathroom was stocked with products no regulatory body had fully reviewed, no clinical trial had confirmed safe for daily use, and no manufacturer had tested them in combination. You washed your hair with a shampoo accused of stripping your scalp barrier. You followed it with an astringent that was 60% alcohol. You treated your skin nightly with an industrial bleaching agent. You occasionally stood a few feet from an outlet with no ground fault protection while the tub was full. Your mother used baby powder that contained asbestos. Your family's antiseptic contained mercury. The aerosol everyone used every morning was destroying the ozone layer, while manufacturers who knew lobbied for more time. The harm became too widespread and too well documented to keep dismissing. And that is what eventually changed the law. Your bathroom in 1985 was not a sanctuary. It was an experiment, and your family was the subject. The 1980s did not invent dangerous products. They just trusted them completely. If this history belongs in someone else's bathroom cabinet, share it.